There's a smoke show.
As it has been shoved down our throats over the past decade, NASCAR as a sport has overwhelmed a decline in popularity. The at-the-track attendance has seen the biggest hit as less people are paying admission to watch a 3 to 4 hour race in person. Over the past few years, ISC and SMI have been in a deadlock battle to remove as much unsold aluminum as humanly possible. Entire grandstands have been purged, as well as some areas getting turned into party decks or drink rails to reduce capacity sizes. With all the negatives of NASCAR's attendance and decline in popularity for some circuits, I figured let's take a look at a track on the rise. In terms of the 2010s, no track has seen an increase quite like the Watkins Glen International. Not only has attendance and TV viewership risen to such high marks, but the product on the track has been elevated as well. This has become an anticipated stop for NASCAR's faithful every season, right up there with the crown jewels and storied venues on the 36 race calendar. It's time to take a look at the rise of Watkins Glen and how this beautiful racetrack has grown its heart and soul for stock car racing. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and smash the bell icon for new uploads. Your long-term support is greatly appreciated, much like the cult following for New York's NASCAR circuit. The origin of Watkins Glen began from the envision of law student and sports car enthusiast Carmen Argetzinger as he began a long-lasting tradition of racing for the village. A 6.6-mile course was crafted from the town's public roads, which raced around the historic Watkins Glen State Park. 1948 marked the beginning of what is now today the 6 Hours of the Glen, with Frank Griswold grabbing the victory in a pre-war Alfa Romeo 8C. An untimely death during the 1952 running altered the original course and heavily restricted the sightlines for city spectators. This promoted the construction of a permanent street course which would surface as the Watkins Glen Grand Prix, or now today the Watkins Glen International. Opening in 1956, this 2.35-mile course consisted of 8 turns and would become the premier racing facility in upstate New York. NASCAR racing would hit the pavement 1 year later, as 20 cars would race 44 laps to become the inaugural NASCAR Glen winner. Known as the Glen 101.2, NASCAR Hall of Famer Buck Baker led all 44 laps in a Chevrolet Mercury and won the ultimate check of $1,000. The league would make 2 more stops in 1964 and 1965 before NASCAR at the Glen would get put on a 2-decade hiatus. The 6 Hours of the Glen continued to thrive while the track scored a monumental event for the 1961 racing season, the United States Grand Prix. The Formula One circuit would call the Speedway its U.S. hub for the next 20 years, with IndyCar turning its first laps in 1979. Finally, on August 10, 1986, NASCAR would return for the long-term future. They would utilize the newly renovated short course, excluding the traditional boot for the sports car races. The Budweiser at the Glen would feature 90 laps around the 2.4-mile course, with 88,000 spectators jamming the grandstands and infield for the event. Tim Richmond held off the Budweiser rides of Darrell Waltrip and Neil Bonnet, continuing his breakout season. Rusty Wallace and Ricky Rudd went on to win the next 4 races before the 1991 running would be mired in tragedy. Daytona 500 champion Ernie Irvan scored his second victory of the campaign in the Kodak Chevrolet, but the loss of a fan favorite altered that tone. On that fateful August afternoon, J.D. McDuffie's Pontiac lost a wheel and went headfirst into the retaining wall at over 100 miles per hour. He was pronounced dead at the scene, as a later autopsy determined he suffered severe brain and skull damage. J.D. McDuffie was 52. Compared to the first 6 races, the 1992 running would feature a tweak in the layout after McDuffie's passing. The interloop portion was added towards the middle of the backstretch, which would slow down the vehicles as they maneuvered the wheel right, entering the carousel. Not only was this a great safety aspect, but it would enhance the side-by-side racing and the challenges to this demanding course. Kyle Petty would win the rain-shortened race in 1992 before Mark Martin would win the next 3 races at the Watkins Glen track, one of which came at the hands of Wally Dallenbach as he dominated the race before a final restart gave Mark Martin the lead. Wally would go on to finish second and ultimately never claim that first victory in 226 starts. Hey, at least he was an iconic commentator on TNT. The 1996 running would feature that sentimental story as Jeffrey Bodine netted his final win in the NASCAR Cup Series. With the traditional event ellipsing its second decade, one driver would make his name around the 11 turns, Jeff Gordon. The Neon 24 went on to lead 34.6% of the laps over the next 5 events, winning 4 of them. This made him NASCAR's road course king from the late 1990s into the early 2000s until another champion took that claim. Tony Stewart would lead the field up in smoke during the 2000s, winning 5 of the 8 races. Ironically, one of his victories came at the hands of the brilliant Flame Racer. Jeff Gordon made a rare mistake by a wheel-hopping turn 1, which handed the win to the Home Depot machine. In an alternate universe, Jeff Gordon would have claimed victory number 5 and would have maintained sole possession as the all-time wins leader at the Glen. Because of that finish, however, Smoke was able to tie him up and break into that sole category in 2009. Adding on to this era, big crashes in 2008, 2009, and 2011 painted the course as a tough one to master. Only the bravest and toughest gladiators graced the wreckage with a trophy, and this further grabbed the attention of the public eye. Reflecting on its prior 29 events, the track was great, but it lacked big moments and thrilling finishes. You look at iconic tracks of NASCAR such as Daytona, Bristol, and Darlington. They've all had classic outcomes every diehard can remember for eternity. The only memorable finishes probably came from Steve Park's triumphant victory and the dramatic 2007 conclusion. After that, nothing gravitating has occurred, which fails to elevate the Glen to that next level. That would all change during the circuit's 30th NASCAR Cup event, the 2012 Finger Lakes 355. Two of NASCAR's most polarizing figures, Brad Keselowski and Kyle Busch, traded the lead back and forth, with Australian Marcos Ambrose in the mix. Some oil from Bobby Labonte's machine set up an entertaining finish in which calamity and chaos would ensue. Kyle Busch would spin after getting into the oil, with Ambrose and Keselowski swapping paint until the start-finish line. It was an old-school finish the fans paid and stayed for, and also gave the track an attention grabber to market and promote for the 2013 season. Emerging from all the crashes and championship implications during 2013 was Kyle Busch as he fended off Brad Keselowski in the closing laps. He earned redemption from 2012 and proceeded to perform one of the coolest burnouts in recent memory, a respectable sequel to the blockbuster the year prior. With all great trilogies comes the twists and turns of the third part, and the 2014 Cheez-It 355 created arguably the greatest Watkins Glen race of them all. Jeff Gordon and Brad Keselowski were knocked out of contention, which gave some drivers and teams below the cut line a chance to work some magic. Contestant number 1 was AJ Allmendinger. Both driver and team were winless in the NASCAR Cup Series, but found themselves in contention with a fast car. Not to mention, AJ is a skilled road racer, winning both Road America and Mid-Ohio in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Contestant number 2 was Marcos Ambrose, vying to score his third Glen victory in 4 seasons. Contrasting from those first 2 wins, a victory today would qualify him for the postseason. This would also mean both Richard Petty Motorsports cars would be represented, truly a historic feat to pull off considering their handshake mentality. The 2 gladiators would battle to the line, trading punches on the final restart of the race. The Dinger prevailed, scoring his first career win and advancing to the 16-driver playoffs. The running created some positive media attention on Monday morning despite Tony Stewart's controversy with dirt racer Kevin Ward acting as a staggering overshadow. Over the past 4 years, the course has consistently produced nail-biting finishes and memories that have strengthened the track's NASCAR heritage. 2015 consisted of a fuel mileage battle between Kevin Harvick and Joey Logano, with sliced bread leading just the final lap to grab his first road course win. Meanwhile, in 2016, a 3-car battle between Denny Hamlin, Brad Keselowski, and MTJ got too aggressive to say the least, as Denny delivered a clutch win during the Cheez-It 355. Luckily for MTJ, he bowled a strike during the 2017 running, leading the most laps en route to the checkers. Matt Kenseth, meanwhile, provided some drama, charging in the second position as the Wisconsin native longed to lock himself into the 16-driver postseason, which kept attention during the final laps. And who could forget the 2018 running as Chase Elliott ended his long winless drought by beating out the defending champion and race winner. The sold-out grandstands went absolutely insane as Chase Elliott, Dawsonville's pride and joy, had finally broken through. Because of the left and right turns Watkins Glen has produced in the entertainment category, attendance has jumped compared to recent years. The Speedway's estimated 40,000 grandstand seats have sold out tickets for 4 consecutive years, and they are currently closing in on number 5 as the calendar gets closer to race day. While the capacity is below average, NASCAR and sellouts are a rare occurrence outside of the Daytona 500. Even more interesting, Watkins Glen is one of the rare facilities to add grandstand seating since the turn of the decade. ISC constructed a new grandstand in Turn 11 before the 2017 edition, likely increasing the capacity by 1,000 to 2,000 people. The final X factor into the equation relies with camping and tailgating around the luxurious and scenic speedway. It's hard to fully estimate the RV crowd as you have a guesstimate of how many people reside in one motorhome. Track officials estimate the crowds are in the 50 to 60K range with a total attendance of 100,000. Meanwhile, Adam Stern from the Sports Business Journal predicts the more realistic route with about 15,000 people, which would give the number close to 60,000. Either way, watching this event on NBC every year, there's never a shortage of spectators or RVs in the infield. You always see masses of hardcore fans in straw hats and pit apparel surround the facility cheering and having a good time at the Glen. From a popularity standpoint, Watkins Glen is one of the NASCAR tracks on the rise. It was always a gem with the sports cars and the scenery provided a major backdrop, but the racing product has definitely increased its character. The road course arguably produces the greatest racing for the Generation 6 package, with side-by-side racing occurring constantly. Now with it creating moments akin to those historic tracks, the foundation has been constructed for the short and long-term future. Over the past few seasons, many fans have longed for more road courses because of the Glen's success. You look at not only NASCAR but for IndyCar and F1, as they usually draw crowds in the 100,000s, and the TV ratings are phenomenal for those events. Honestly, if NASCAR added a few more road courses, I think we could see some more new fans enter the sport. Speaking from personal experience, I have some friends that don't watch NASCAR because it's the typical layout with cars going around in circles, even though technically the track is an oval. One of their ideas to fix this problem would be to add more road courses, more specifically a street course in the middle of a city. With the successes of Watkins Glen, if they can get the course just right, I wouldn't mind seeing more of these types of races on the schedule. Ultimately, these races could have major benefits as you could see tens of thousands of people in attendance, an uprise in TV ratings, and more casual and die-hard racing fans in the future. For all the naysayers that doubt road courses, you just have to look at the rise of the upstate New York racetrack, as Watkins Glen has certainly been one of the hottest tracks over the past couple years. So anyways, this is NRF signing out, and just remember, life's a beach and then you drive.